Oh, welcome back to It's Happy Outside Homestead. Look at these beautiful tomatoes and peppers that I picked from the garden. Stay tuned. It's salsa time. So we've been very blessed with our tomatoes, and this is one of the main reasons that we grew the tomatoes, is so that we can have fresh salsa like this. Salsa is one of Rob's favorite snacks, and I feel like it's a healthy alternative to other things that we could be eating. So we're really enjoying being able to make this. So I'm starting out by cutting up 3 tomatoes. I am following a recipe off of allrecipes.com, and I'm using the Paul Roberson and the True Black Brandy Wine. They were some seeds, or we started these tomatoes from seeds. They're seeds, we got them from Baker Creek, and they have done really well. You could also use your blender or food processor to cut up these tomatoes, but I just decided to hand chop everything. Here I'm showing you the inside of how beautiful these tomatoes are. Now I'm going to start cutting up the bell pepper. This recipe calls for half a cup of bell peppers. I have the albino bullnose. They were actually started from the Baker Creek seeds as well. I have some other bullnose peppers. Those were a different brand of seeds that I don't remember off the top of my head right now. So after I get done cutting up the bell peppers, which was a half a cup, I move on to the jalapeno peppers. This recipe calls for 4 teaspoons of fresh jalapeno peppers, including the seeds, but I probably only used about 2 teaspoons of jalapeno peppers because these peppers were extremely spicy. These jalapeno peppers, I can feel the heat, like I guess the spiciness of them. It's already kind of like burning my face a little bit.
Really?
And I haven't even tasted them. I'm just cutting them. So I'm wondering how spicy they are.
You try a little piece of one.
I can, like, when I can feel it in my throat. Is it hot?
Yeah,
That one needs to be hotter. So just take that into consideration when you're cutting these up. You might want to omit the seeds. I probably could have used 4 teaspoons if I would have done that, but I had already chopped them up, and so I chose to just use 2. I don't know if I'm a glutton for punishment or if I just like pain. So next I start cutting up the onion. For this recipe, you'll need 1 cup. Next, I move on to the lime, and I don't know if y'all know this trick or not, but if you roll a lime around before you cut it, it will make it easier to juice, especially if you're squeezing the juice out by hand. So I do that before I cut it, and this recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of lime juice, and I find that this small lime gives me just enough juice for the salsa. For this video, I am using this small juicing jar because I wanted to actually measure the lime juice out so that I could tell you correct measurements. But this lime contained exactly 2 tablespoons of lime juice. I don't normally use this little jar, but I wanted to make sure that I gave you correct measurements. And this little lime was perfect for this recipe. Next, I move on to the cilantro. This recipe calls for a 1/4 cup of cilantro. Normally, this would be homegrown, but unfortunately, this year we didn't get it in the ground on time. Maybe when it gets a little cooler here, I'll be able to grow some, because cilantro here grows like crazy. I got all the veggies cut up. I move on to the spices. The first spice that I'm adding is 1/2 teaspoon of salt. The recipe actually calls for 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt, but I'm using pink Himalayan salt because this is normally what we have on hand. The next thing I add is a 1/2 teaspoon of ground cumin. The next thing I add is fresh ground black pepper. I didn't measure this out because I was using the grinder to grind it into the salsa. You can measure it out if you want. The recipe calls for 1/2 teaspoon. I just eyeballed it. So once you add everything to the bowl, you're going to just stir it around until you have everything well distributed. While I was stirring, if I found any pieces that I thought were too big, I just squished them or smashed them with the spoon. And once you're done, this is what you should have. As you can see, someone approves. The recipe doesn't call for this, but I recommend throwing in a couple of cloves of diced garlic. It really makes the flavor pop. Well, y'all, now it's time to get that salsa canned up and into the fridge. I have a feeling it's not going to last very long around here, but that's okay. That's why we made it, right? Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. As always, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.